I think anybody who finds themselves concerned about what they think is going on in those classes should visit. They should call the program and say, I'd just like to come and see. And then judge for yourself, right? You don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take the program's word for it. Judge for yourself. And I think what people will find is they'll find a group of young people that are deeply engaged in the kinds of conversations that are happening in the classroom. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what all parents want for their children. And you know, that crosses racial boundaries, class boundaries, gender boundaries. And when you go in there, what you'll actually see is that it's not all Latino kids in there. That there's white students in there, there's black students in there. So the myth making that's gone on around who's in the class and what they're teaching, I think could pretty easily be dispelled if folks would just take the time to go see it and visit it. U.S. history has become conflated with European history and European culture, and I think that's problematic, particularly in a state like Arizona, where a very large percentage of the student population are of Mexican descent, whether they're immigrants or whether they're U.S. born from Mexico. And the research is pretty clear about how important it is that young people understand not only their specific region, but also their own cultural heritage. And of course, when you look at the outcomes for young people that are in that program, they're astounding. Everybody's calling for accountability for schools. And, you know, for the last 8 or 9 years, that accountability has been heavily centered around state and national testing. Well, the kids in the Mexican American and Raza Studies program in Tucson Unified are outperforming all their peers on those tests. Those tests don't measure Chicano history. They also measure math, right? So what it reaffirms is what we've known in the research for a while, that the stronger sense young people have about themselves and that they matter and that their culture matters and that their language matters and that their history matters, the better they will do across all subjects, whether those subjects are centered on that cultural history or not. And I think that part has been lost in the conversation. And it's interesting how there was this intense demand for that kind of accountability, and then once they suddenly started getting it, once they suddenly found a way, right, to get Latino youth to excel in school, suddenly that's a problem. And in fact, Tom Horn said that this isn't about achievement. And if schools are not about achievement, then what are they about? One of the things that's been put forward about ethnic studies is that, well, they focus so much on Latino people being oppressed that they're going to make kids depressed, right? And actually, the research doesn't bear that out at all, right? That the more that you are able to focus and talk about the struggles that you've been through, the stronger you feel, right, about that element of your identity. And if you're focusing on struggles that you've been through as an individual or as a people, what it actually reveals is your resiliency, right? It makes you feel hopeful. It makes you feel empowered. Like, wow, I've come from and it's interesting how the U.S. regularly takes that narrative, not only in the national discourse, but also in the way we teach history. Right, that we talk about how we, came from this oppressive condition in England and we freed ourselves. Why doesn't that make, say, people of British descent feel oppressed? Right? It doesn't. It makes them feel empowered. Well, why does it make them feel empowered? Because they realized in telling that history that you have agency, right? That when you feel like conditions are unfair, that you can respond. In my mind, that seems to be the American way, right? That if things are wrong, you should speak up. Thomas Jefferson himself said that every generation should have its own revolution. But suddenly, right, they're breeding revolutionaries. If schools are meant to serve young people and families, then I would like to hear those young people and those families. We did that. I mean, we randomly selected focus groups out of those classes. And what we found to a person was young people saying that this is the one class every day where I feel loved, where I feel cared for, where I feel like I matter. And it makes me want to go into my other classes and excel.